Um, from there, let's just jump into things. Sounds like NIL, they're trying their best to fix NIL, right? That is the focus right now because most people understand the crap show that it is. I don't know if they're going to have any success with this, but just really quickly, Ross Dellinger comes out with an article that the Power Four conferences are going to attempt to get the 70 plus schools plus the other programs that will probably opt into the House settlement to sign away the rights to dispute anything, right? Like to fight back against anything. We'll basically say, yes, we will not pay above the cap. I think this has a lot of issues. I read the Staples article with On3. I thought his was really good. Kind of came at it from the Tennessee perspective since Tennessee passed some legislation recently. And ultimately, I'll just give my take off the bat and then we'll kind of toss this around. I think it would be good for college football if all 70 schools plus, the X's and O's outside of that did agree to say, yeah, we'll institute a cap. We'll try and bring some normalcy back to this thing. I think that would be a good thing. I think that would be a good thing for parity. I think that would be, it would put an emphasis back on actual recruiting and not bag chasing. It would put an emphasis on the way that you choose to pay your roster. I think it would, ultimately, I think it would be good for the sport. I think they're a long way away from that being passed. I think they're a long way away from that being a realistic thing. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you can tell rich boosters what they can or can't do with their money when there's not some kind of a CBA in place, some kind of employment status in place. That's how the NFL gets away with it. I've heard comparisons from what Deloitte's going to do to, hey, there's a reason the Cowboys can't have some local oil guy give Dak Prescott another $50 million and then lower his salary because they've agreed to that through collective bargaining. And so I think we're a long way off. I think this is going to go back to the courts even once the House settlement is passed. But I guess, Cole, we'll start with you since you're pretty fired up today. Tennessee seems to be at the middle of this because Tennessee's legislature just, in Vandy too, I guess I'll give them the little nod, not to upset the Vandy listeners if they're interested in football at all right now, which their baseball team's rolling. So maybe sports are kind of a fun topic for them at this moment. But I think this obviously, or not I think, this obviously very directly contradicts what Tennessee's legislation just passed, which was you don't have to follow the House settlement. You can pay these kids whatever the heck you want. And so will Danny White opt into this? Will the SEC kick teams out? I mean, I have a hard time thinking you can kick 15 of 16 teams out that don't agree to this. But I think this is a good try by the Power Four conferences. I don't know if it ever ends up meaning anything.
I have no problem with this for one main reason. It has nothing to do with the transfer portal. It has everything to do with retaining talent. You look across all of college football, what's been the biggest negative for a lot of teams that we view as actual forces to go on a run to the postseason? The depth. How do you feel about your overall offensive line depth? How do you feel about your cornerback depth? How do you feel about your wide receiver room? And you say to yourself, well, we have guys that we believe could end up being fixtures for our program, but they're not ready yet. But you can't turn to that sophomore that's been sitting there for 2 years with a red shirt because of he's now playing at East Carolina. He's now playing at Boise State. He's now playing at Georgia State. So that way he can get actual experience to eventually transfer to another Power Four school and get a major NIL deal. And so the regulations with this, I think, are going to do good because of it's going to allow players to have to eventually be a part of a allocation roster of signing contracts. And, one person that does this very well is Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney says, I am going to make sure that my roster is as much retained as possible because of I want to be a threat in the ACC. And if you see that in the SEC, well, then Georgia's back at the powerhouse that we know. Tennessee can be at that powerhouse that we know. Alabama can be at that powerhouse that we know. Texas is already there and they're not losing talent, but eventually they could fall into that category. So I think that's a good thing. I think what more so this is doing is, as much as you want to say this is going to give it a try, it's going to lead to the expansion of what will be the Power 2 and just a super conference because of we're not going to see people agree with these takes. And it's very well put because of every situation is completely different, TJ and Tom. When we think about this, it's a state regulation thing. It's not a national regulation thing. And just like any state law, what is being told in New Jersey is completely different than what's being told in Florida. What's going on and what are the rules out in North Dakota completely contradict what's going on in California. And you can't expect every single program to say, well, that's just according to plan. We can all agree to that. and nor should they. Now, again, am I for having a salary cap and having a certain limit to allow rosters to be properly built? Absolutely. I think that's a good thing for the sport. But unfortunately, you're never going to see Texas say, hey, let's let Texas Tech have the exact same amount of allocations and resources with what they have out in Lubbock. Let's allow Baylor and TCU to be on the same level playing field as us, despite us being the state institution. Let's allow Louisiana Monroe to have similar attributes to what you currently have with the state of Louisiana's state university. Let's allow Florida State and Florida Atlantic to be equal in overall revenue distribution. That's where you're going to have that negativity. And eventually, I think it's a good ploy to allow the Power Four teams to have a baseline, to figure out, hey, we're in a really good spot. We want to be able to have competitive football. We want proper representation, but you're never going to get everyone to agree with it because number one, every conference is built differently. Number two, every revenue is built differently by the conference. And number three, and most importantly, every school has certain boosters that are willing to open up their wallets if it means hoisting up a national title. Some are willing to pay more than others. And eventually you can't tell them, hey, don't go ahead and use your hard-earned cash towards your university. Why would we want to see you ever do anything like that?
I think we have to remember that before there was NIL, there were plenty of boosters and, people supporting these programs that believed in the paper bag full of cash. So it's like, that didn't go away. That practice hasn't gone away by any means. So to me, the way college football has progressed, we will see it feel more like Major League Baseball than we will have it feel like the National Football League. And what I mean by that is to the point of TJ earlier having that cap space for everybody across the board. Everybody's the same. You can maybe get away with that between the SEC and the Big Ten, thus this show, the Power Two, that whole concept. I really would be shocked to see if you get the Power Four to all agree to the exact same concept there in terms of cap space. What you're going to have is the LA Dodgers of the world and Ohio State, Georgia and Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. And then you're going to have these quote unquote developmental markets. The University of Arizona is not going to have the same cap space as one of those aforementioned juggernauts, that sort of thing. So I think you're going to see that model first, and it's going to take a long time for them even to think about getting to a point where everybody across four conferences is the same. And I completely agree with TJ. I think you're going to see the mega super conference of the SEC and the Big Ten far sooner than anything. The NCAA apparently has already made it clear. It's like, yeah, we're just going to let them handle this whole NIL situation, them being the Power Four. So the NCAA just continues to become more and more pointless. Not that they haven't been pointless for a very long time. And I saw something on social media is that the NCAA is basically like really good at organizing postseason tournaments. So thank you for booking hotels and flights and venues and putting up banners and stuff and cups. Thanks for that. So yeah, I would love to see, personally as a fan, I would love to see the Power Four. Everybody has the same cap space, but there will always be workarounds so long as college football has existed. There have always been workarounds. Let's not pretend that people's hands were clean back in the 1990s or any of that stuff. I always point towards Pony Excess at SMU. It's like, you think the people who nearly got the death penalty did get the death penalty, that those people who created that situation just stopped caring? Like, they're back, by the way. They're back again at SMU. So they're everywhere. You're not going to get rid of them. But there's this glorious future of college football. I'd be like, man, it'd be great if they got all this figured out, but they do need a collective bargaining agreement. They do need contracts for players. I don't believe employee status is the way to go. You need professional contracts. So we're a long ways off from this being fixed.
Hey, Tom, you want to know what gets rid of the collective? You know what allows us to have a collective bargaining agreement? Getting rid of the NCAA, because that's the only way we're ever going to get one of those collective bargaining agreements. So until the NCAA wants to actually say, you know what, let's hire a commissioner, let's get somebody who can actually run college football, then this is the world that we're going to live in. A lot of what ifs, a lot of maybe this could happen, potentially this goes on, a lot of conversations behind closed doors, a lot of positivity when it comes to traction for these type of contracts, but nothing's ever going to be put pen to paper. We know that's not going to happen, because why would anybody agree with it when everybody can't be on the same level playing field?
The best case scenario, and you guys kind of alluded to it and mentioned it, is around that 2030 timeframe when the Big Ten's media deal is up, the SEC's is just a few years off, Florida State, Clemson, UNC, maybe others jump out of their situations, and we do kind of get a super league. If we had a super league of what are there 70 Power 4 teams plus Notre Dame, so about 71, right? It's roughly half of FBS, the tier 1. If we did get that formulated into 60 teams, right, that want to compete at this level, and they were under one media structure, and that super league of the Power 2, let's call it that because we'd like to sell the naming rights to the show. If we got to that and everybody was getting the same media revenue, I think that would be your best bet around that time frame when we may go to a super league, which we effectively have now. Let's be very honest. But when you do have everybody under the same umbrella and they are getting that same media rights revenue and they are able to compete at that level, because you're right. The most of the Power 2, if not all, can't afford this. If not, what are they doing running their athletic departments with the money they're getting from the SEC and the Big Ten, Fox and ESPN? But then you look at, Florida State, Clemson, Texas Tech. There are certainly schools that fall outside of the Power 2 right now that can do it, but a Wake Forest can't, right? I struggle to think of Boston College or a Syracuse can. Arizona mentioned. There are certainly schools that Cincinnati. I don't know that UCF could. Maybe in 5 years, being in the state of Florida, maybe they're around that threshold now, but I don't think they can right now. But I do think that around that 2030 timeframe, if we did have not just a super league effectively, but in actuality where we had that, maybe that would be a good time frame looking to do it. I do agree, though. It will just go back to the paper bag situation. And what's interesting is you mentioned, Amanda Kristovich, who does a great job reporting on all this stuff, basically put out today that the NCAA is no longer going to enforce the eligibility rules around paying players. Like, that is going to be on the conferences to enforce. Is the SEC going to suspend Alabama, or are they going to really do that to Georgia or Ohio, Big Ten to the Ohio States of the world?
Why?
Because they pay Georgia, because they pay Jeremiah Smith more money? I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen. And even if they do, that is going to court. Like, that is going to court because there's not an antitrust exemption. There's not a collective bargaining agreement. You can't tell these programs, boosters, players that you can't give or receive money. Somebody could super chat us right now, $500,000 if you're watching and you can do it. But
I'd recommend it.
Yeah, they can't tell them that you can't do X, Y, Z without the proper framework in place. And so I think we've got to get a few years down the road. I think this is going to be a nice try by these Power 4 conferences. I don't think there's enough teeth to it. I don't think it'll hold up in court. The courts have shown that they are very pro-player. Any matters to do with NIL, any matters to do with money. And so it's a great thought. I would love it. I would love if everybody had the same cap that you can't spend over X amount. I would love if enforcement came back and you didn't have, let's be very honest, $40 million for a roster is absolutely ridiculous. But I just don't think that we're super close to it. Now, some ADs out there think it is close. Some coaches out there think that it is going to happen and that it will provide a checks and balances. I don't believe that it's that pie in the sky, though.
I just love the fact that you said, well, Alabama's going to get suspended. Ohio State's going to get suspended. Let's ask television man Tom himself this. Hey, Tom, I can sell you on the idea with ratings that Jeremiah Smith got paid an extra $2 million, so we got to suspend now Ohio State. But Northwestern, they went 10-2 this year. They're going to be the team that we're throwing on the television rights. Like, it's not going to work because if you can't let the programs that bring in the highest revenue be penalized for it. If a Vanderbilt does this, you can easily throw them to the wayside because if they don't bring in enough money. If you do it to an Illinois, they can do it because if they don't bring in them enough money. And it's not fair to them, but the reality is that Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas A&M, USC, Oregon, Washington even, they get a penalty and they get a pass because of they bring in the most revenue for the actual conference. So you're never going to see them be penalized because of the ratings would go down. And when the ratings go down, it's bad for business.
The concept of penalized now at this point in college football, at least for like the top 15, top 10 brands. I'm not saying top 10 ranked or 15 ranked. I'm saying top 15 most profitable brands, all that sort of stuff. You will never see a postseason ban ever again.
Ever.
As long as the team takes the field and the game is aired on television, you will never see something get in the way of that in terms of some sort of punishment. Will there be fines? Yeah, I think fines are going to happen, but you're going to take Jeremiah Smith off the field, like, unless there is a strong moral or criminal element to a punishment, then yeah, you're never going to see that.
Shame on Jeremiah Smith. Shame on Jeremiah Smith. He's not going to play 2 games this year. We're going to sit him out against Ohio, and we're going to sit him out against Nebraska. That's his penalty. Internally, that's what we got. He did wrong. Ty Simpson, you're not allowed to play this year.
Right.
South Florida, James Madison, those 2 games, not allowed to play in them. Self-inflicting ban. That's what we're going to see.
Or Florida State. We could do the Florida State game if he'd like to sit that one out. I'm all for that one.
So Austin Mack can win by 3 touchdowns? Okay,
whatever it takes, man. If we can keep it a 24-point game instead of 31, then I am all for it. It's interesting to watch. It would take the schools really being on board. It would take the schools kind of being fed up with the amount of money, but it's not their money. It's coming from the boosters anyway. So what do they care, right? It's not like Ohio State's spending. Ohio State can only spend the cap. Like that is a rule. Like that's not, but it's not their money coming from outside anyway. So what do they care? What do they care if they don't, if some booster wants to pony up $8 million for a recruit? Well, what do they care? It's not more off of their bottom line.
It's like whenever Arkansas fans get so pissy about how much money is being spent. Well, call Jerry Jones instead of having him host the Southwest Classic. Give the $25 million that he's putting up for that game to be played in Arlington to the football program. Hey, you got the money. Do it.
Yeah.